Okay, so here is your random white background of the day. I was just at my mum's house, and in fact I still am as I record this, and I thought, why on earth have I not put one of my history podcasts onto YouTube? So I thought that I better do a very quick introduction video to say that you're about to hear an episode from the A Sort of Interesting show that's available on iTunes or over at asortofinterestinglife.com. You can find all the links and listen to the episodes over on the site. This is probably one of the most popular episodes that we're about to listen to. I hope you enjoy it, and well, if I don't see you again in this video, I'll say thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll have a fantastic day. Until the next time, as usual, check out my other videos for all the usual boaty stuff. I've got documentary episode 2 ready to go, probably next week, as I'd say probably 7 or 8 days after you're watching this video, if you're watching it immediately after it goes online. And I am now rambling totally, completely nonsensically. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoy what you're about to hear. And until the next time, have a fantastic day and farewell. Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from asortofinterestinglife.com, and you're listening to The Sort of Interesting Show. Welcome back then everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll also say a quick thank you to everybody who downloaded the Narrowboat special episode last week that was nothing at all to do with history. It was incredibly well received, I've got to say, and as usual, thank you all so much for the messages. And also again, thank you to everybody who's gone over to thenarrowboatlad.com, which takes you straight to my YouTube channel, all about living on a narrowboat and all sorts of biking and walking and just general fun and games and trying to live a happy life out in the middle of nowhere and up mountains and all that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you all so much for that. It was great to see how people reacted to the last episode without not being a history one, as I was a little bit worried about posting it, but that seemed to all go well and people seem to enjoy it, so who knows, perhaps there'll be a few more narrowboat cameos in the future. Also, as well, I'd like to point out and quickly plug me book as usual. If you do want to help me out, support the show, or just generally learn a little bit more about life on a narrowboat, then check out my Kindle book, The Narrowboat Lad. It's only £1.53 and, well, you can go and get it right on the Kindle and Kindle apps and all the usual things like that. So then, I suppose it's time that we got down to some history. Today, we are going a little bit further afield and a little bit further back in time than the series has ever gone before. And when I say a little bit further back in time, I'm talking to the year 246 BCE. And when I say a little bit further afield, I'm talking of heading over to China. Although, it's not quite China yet. So, the year is 246 BCE. A 13-year-old boy has just become very important. In fact, so important that he's actually a king of the state of Qin. Now that's spelt Qin, but I believe it's pronounced Qin, so apologies if my pronunciation in this episode is off a little, as this is not my strongest area of pronunciations. So, this chap here, 13 years old, just become king of one of the great states. Could he have possibly known or even believed that one day he would become the first emperor of a united China? Or that he would leave behind physical relics that would arguably be on par with his actual lifetime achievements? So, let's get down to the tale of Young Xiao, also known as Ying Zheng, or, as he is now better known, again, I apologise for my pronunciations, Qin Shi Huang. As happens far too often in history, what we know of Qin was written a long time after his death, and also by people who were not necessarily going to be giving him the most positive and glowing reviews. For the sake of the podcast, though, I hope that we can all agree to place a little bit of faith in this story. Who knows what the utter, absolute, factual truth may be, but this is what has been passed down to us. So, at the age of 13, this youngster found himself in the middle of a war, and war on a massive scale against 6 other major states. Yet, presumably, under the guidance of his government and ministers, an amazing thing happened. He was victorious. After 7 years of campaigning, the Qin army had taken 33 enemy cities and was becoming increasingly powerful when compared to its neighbours. However, China is a very big place, as a lot of us may be familiar with, so it was to take nearly a further 2 decades to actually cement control completely. And even then, when you're trying to govern an area of such a huge geographic size, you can imagine that throws up all sorts of insecurities and potential problems, even if you think everything's going well. These 25 years of war, which brought to an end the War in States period of Chinese history, very aptly named there, they hold many incredible and horrific stories, as you can surely imagine. 25 years of war is going to fetch up an awful lot of stuff. In 225 BCE, the Qin army conquered the state of Wei, and they found themselves coming up to the capital, discovering that the walls were so incredibly thick and well reinforced that they didn't believe there was any way that they were going to break through them and be able to invade the city. They also didn't want to spend an awful lot of time laying siege and trying to starve the residents out. So instead they took a rather interesting way, and it's the power of nature again being harnessed by man in ways that really aren't very positive at all for anyone involved. In an event that mirrors quite a few other various instances where this pops up as a way that a city has been brought to its knees, the army didn't just stand around waiting. They instead diverted the waters of a local river that ran in fact with the water of the famous Yellow River, so that it then flooded the city, which we can only guess at what sort of destruction and misery this would have caused. The Qin must have considered it a great success though, because it soon fetched the city's resolve absolutely to its knees, and the king promptly surrendered. So, barely 40 years old, Qin Shi Huang could now surely sit back and rest with his new title of First Emperor of China. Or could he? Well, this isn't the way that history normally goes, and the life of an emperor was far from simple. He had already had 3 high-profile attempts on his life. The constant threat of assassination alone would have been an incredible stress, I'm sure, no matter what amount of land you could say that you were in charge of. If people are popping up and trying to kill you at any given moment, that's not going to be doing you much good for a sound night's sleep, I don't imagine. Then when you discover that your mother has been secretly having children by somebody you were told was a eunuch, then your confidence in those around you must surely dwindle a little further, and I'm not really sure what you can say to those sorts of accusations, but these must surely have been but a few of the reasons that led to Qin being so obsessed with immortality. Yes, he was determined to find a way to become immortal. He would attempt to find alchemists able to do this with the usual sorts of goodness knows what kind of potions, including, I dread to think what ingredients. And there's all sorts of research and experiments that he would commission in order to hopefully find this secret to make himself immortal. And he once sent an exploratory group off into the sea with the mission of finding a mysterious, legendary island where it was said the elixir of life could be found. This group never returned, and you could look at this in 2 ways. They vanished because they did do this mission never to be seen again and ended up who knows where, or, more likely, they probably knew that if they turned up back to see the Emperor again, empty-handed, then they would almost certainly face death, which obviously doesn't encourage you to go, right, we're on an impossible mission to find something that doesn't exist. Right, shall we go away for a bit and then come back and see what he says? Or shall we just sail across to Japan and try and settle down there for a quiet life of relative safety? So that, I think, is probably the most likely thing that happened, unless they were very, very loyal, and who knows, perhaps they're still sailing around now, nearly 2,300 years later. At the time, Mercury was believed to be a key element in eternal life, and the Emperor began to take mercury pills. Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell you not to try that at home, because swallowing capsules of a liquid metal is far from, well, I don't know, I think that's going in the opposite direction of giving you eternal life, and I don't think that's going to give you much of a life at all after you've done it a couple of times, or depending on how big the pills are, I suppose even once. So it certainly didn't help Emperor Qin live any longer, as his cause of death is believed to have come from mercury poisoning. And again, it seems that history dealt a great leader an incredibly ironic and almost poetic death in it working out to be the purest form of irony that I can imagine. And rather paradoxically though, it seems that for all his obsession with immortality, Qin had accepted death from the start, as one of the earliest projects he had started in his reign was the work on his tomb. The Tomb of the Emperor is one of those incredible things that, when I first heard about it a few years ago, I could not get my head around the concept. But before we get to his tomb, we have to get past his army, the Terracotta Army, that is. I'd hazard a guess that most of the people listening to this podcast will have heard of the Terracotta Army, so there's no need to discuss at length the incredible scale of it and what it is in every single detail. But for the record, it's just an amazing achievement. It was discovered only 2,000 years after it was buried, and it's made of over 8,000 life-size terracotta models. There's also believed to be nearly 1,000 horses and over 100 chariots. So that is just staggering to think of the work that went into that. And for them to literally be buried with no intention of them to ever see the light of day again. Or at least that's our modern take on things. Of course, at the time, the idea was that the army was created to be a real-life military force that would serve the emperor in his afterlife. To this effect, they were even placed into military formations and ordered in the proper military way, with ranks and commanders in all their correct places ready to go into battle. Something that is even more fascinating, to me at least, is the non-military aspect of the site. There are also many dancers and musicians buried, assumedly to entertain the troops while they waited. There are even animals such as water birds being discovered there. A truly incredible thing to have created, I think. If we manage to defeat this army, however, then perhaps we might have a chance to get to the Emperor in his magnificent tomb. The tomb has not been opened, and who knows if it ever will be, but it's definitely an area that I'm quite interested to see how modern-day China and the various regulations and rules surrounding it are going to pan out, and whether we get to see truly how magnificent this place is one day in the future. But this is neither the time nor the place to discuss the policies of the Chinese government. So the fact that it is unopened does allow us to have the mystery and the magnificence to churn over in our minds and, I don't know, build itself into something that reality can never live up to. But many secrets remain to be found, as we're well aware, beyond just what the Terracotta Army as a starter is promising. But the legends and tales passed down to us say that there's crossbow-type rigs and traps set up that will stop intruders. So who knows, if these turn out to be true, it could just be, on a basic safety level, a pretty challenging excavation to partake in. If we did ever manage to make it past the army and past the booby traps and past the bureaucracy and get into this tomb though, who knows what we would find. It's said that there's a whole starry night sky created on the roof by embedding jewels into the ceiling, and some kind of water-powered clock ticks on for eternity while the Emperor's body lies sleeping. The floor of the tomb is said to be a miniature replica of the whole of China. The huge realm that Qin Shi Huang conquered is literally watched over by him. Mercury once again comes up in the Emperor's story, as it's said there are rivers of running mercury that go through the floor, representing the great rivers of his land. And this legend has even been backed up in recent times by tests carried out on the ground above, showing a greatly increased mercury concentration compared to what you would normally expect to find. So that's definitely a tantalising little piece of modern research that's been discovered on the site. And I suppose that it really is a tomb fit for an emperor, looking over a huge map with running mercury rivers under a jewel-encrusted sky. How fairy tale, how classic and stereotypically grand. I don't know really, there's not many more words and gushing praises that I could possibly add to it, but it just sounds like it could be an absolutely incredible bit of archaeology to take part in when the time does come, if it does come. So, there's one final and sort of chilling, terrifying twist to the end of this. We've seen the incredible power and the incredible deeds of just uniting China and then having such an extravagant tomb. There's one final and terrifying twist to this, which I suppose recalls going back to the obsession and paranoia with assassination attempts and security. The perfect ultimate destination of this life of paranoia leads to those who were closest to the Emperor, as well as people who worked on the construction of the tomb, were sealed inside with his body. So just consider that for a terrifying way to die. Starving in the dark, even though you're in one of the grandest places that, well, certainly would have existed in the world back then. And who knows what it would be like in comparison to today's standards of grandeur. And that, to me, is yet another random little twist and another intriguing little thing to consider what there may be waiting to be discovered underground. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll also go back and download the previous episodes if you haven't already listened to those too. So once again, thank you very much. I'll also say, as I always do, please make sure you check out thenarrowboatlad.com. It'll take you straight to my YouTube channel, all about life on a narrowboat in the lovely English and Welsh countryside. And check out my book for the Kindle, only £1.53. Once again, that's simply called The Narrowboat Lad. And until the next time, I hope that you have a fantastic week. I hope you have a fantastic month, however long it takes you to tune back in. And, well, I'll see you around soon. Farewell.